materials management, dictionaries, security, and then the first dictionary setup I'm going to go over is the task configuration, and then I'm going to go into enter edit. Now the task configuration dictionary is used to define the materials management functions for which your health organization would want MM to generate tasks for the users that can be processed through the process task routines. So again, anything you flag here to generate tasks would appear on the user's process task routine. So the first routine we have, or the first field, is the purchase requisition to verify. This is a yes or no field. If you enter yes here, you're telling the system that you want it to generate a task for purchase requisitions that require verification. If you don't wish for tasks to generate for purchase requisitions that need to be verified, you would simply enter no. Purchase orders to verify. Here you would indicate a yes or no, once again. And if you wish for tasks to generate for purchase orders that require verification, you would simply enter yes. If you don't, just enter no. Purchase order invoice exceptions. If you want a task to generate for outstanding invoice exceptions, now those are invoices that are in an unapproved status, you would go ahead and enter yes. If not, just enter no. The inventory requisition to process. Here you would want to identify yes or no, not yes or no, but if you wish for the system to generate a task for inventory requisitions that require processing, you have the option of 4 selections. The first one is verified. If you select verify, only tasks that are an IRVER type will generate, and those are inventory recs that are in a pending status and that need to be verified. If you selected the pick list, it would only generate an INVREQ task, which is a task of an inventory requisition that has already been verified and just needs to be posted. Or you can go ahead and select both, which would have the system generate both a verification task and a pick list task, or none, which is you indicating you wish none of the type of task to be generated. Work orders to scheduled. If you want to generate a task for work orders that require scheduling, you would go ahead and enter in yes here. If not, just enter no. And the compiled reports to print. This again is if you wish the system to generate a task for compiled reports that require printing, you could go ahead and say yes. Now there are only 4 types of compiled reports that can be printed, and those are purchase orders, inventory, equipment, and work orders. Now over on the right hand side, we have the notify users of task events. Here, if you only wish for tasks that are in a status of open to appear on the process task routine, you can identify and select open only. If you wish for the users to be notified of tasks that are both open and complete, you can go ahead and select the open and complete. Or if you wish for the users to receive a task for every type of status that's available, you can go ahead and select every event. Now I want to point out that the compiled reports to print, this one only has the option of open only, and that automatically defaults in since it's a grayed out box and you can't get a drop off. And next within this dictionary we have the invoice exceptions. Now this goes in correlation with the purchase order invoice exceptions up here, tasks that are going to be generated. So if you wish the buyer to be the default user who gets assigned the task, you would go ahead and flag the buyer as the default yes. Now this is the buyer that is assigned on the purchase order. If you wish the invoice user to be assigned the task, you would set that invoice user as the default. Now the invoice user is the user who went and entered in the invoice within the MMAP interface. We also have the email section. Here you can enter in a yes if you wish for the buyer or invoice user to receive an email for the PO invoice type task. And we also have the FYI task. Here, if you flag the FYI as yes, the buyer or the invoice user, depending if you flag them both as yes, would receive a task that's an FYI, which is one that just appears on their process task, but it's in a grayed out, and it doesn't allow them to launch it and actually process the invoice exception. It's just basically letting them know, FYI, a task exists out there for this particular invoice. The next dictionaries we're going to be going over are the Verify Groups dictionaries. And the first one I'm going to go look at is the Enter, Edit, Inventory, Requisition Verify Group. Now, as I pointed out, inventory requisitions can generate two different types of tasks. The first one being the verification task and the second one being the pick list task. So this in Verify Group Dictionary controls the verification task. So the first thing you would want to do is create a mnemonic. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the one I'll be working with, which is the CS department. Next, what you'll want to do is flag it as active yes, provide it with the name. So as you can see, I entered in my name of CS Inventory Department Type Rec. Next, you're brought to the inventory field, and here's where you will enter in the inventory the requisition verify group is being created for. So for this example, it's for my CS inventory. Next, you're brought to the requisition type, and here's where you will select the requisition type that you want to associate to the verify group. A drop-down, you have the option of selecting either department, recurring, inventory restock, work order, and surgical. And these are the 5 types of inventory requisitions that are available. Next, you're brought to the verify users. So here's where you would go ahead and start entering all of the users who are authorized to verify for our CS inventory department type recs. Next, we have the default. You would flag yes here to a user if you want them to automatically be assigned any tasks. Only one user can be flagged as a default user. And I want to point out that if no user is flagged as the default user, then no task is going to be generated. Next, we have the email field. Here you would go ahead and identify a yes or no if you wish to receive an email type, an email notifying for this type of requisition. And we also have the FYI task, which is indicating if you wish the system to generate an FYI task for this inventory requisition. Next, we have the departments field. Here's where you would enter in the departments that you wish the verification group to be associated with. So for this example, any department type inventory recs for my CS inventory that are either for department 01.6000, 01.6010, and 01.6040 will be given this mnemonic of CS department. Now you'll only be able to access this department field if the requisition type was either a department, a recurring, a work order, or surgical. If you had flagged the requisition type as an inventory restock, then you would have access to this restock for inventory section, which is where you would identify the inventories for restock that would have been associated with the replenishment of the CS inventory. Now that we've gone over the verification piece of the inventory requisition, I want to go over the pick list portion. To do that, I'm going to go to my inventory dictionary, enter edit. At the mnemonic field, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my CS inventory. And at the top, I'm going to pick or select the pick list tab. Here is where you would enter and control who gets assigned pick list to pick. So the first thing you would want to do is create the pick list group. Now you can have more than one pick list group created for a particular inventory. Next, we have the default for departments. If you entered a yes within this field, then this pick list group, so our MT pick list group, will be used for all pick list tasks for requisitions for departments that are not explicitly listed in any pick list group. Same thing goes for the default for inventory yes. If this is flagged here as yes, then any inventory restocks that are not listed specifically in a pick list group would have this MT as the default pick list group. Pick list users. Here's where you would begin to enter in all of the users that you want to associate to the MT pick list group and which are authorized to pick and verify the tasks. You would go ahead and define a default user for the pick list group. Now this user is the one who would be assigned the INV REQ type tasks within their process task routine. Again, only one user within each group can be defined as the default user. We also have the email and FYI, which you can go ahead and flag as yes if you wish an email to be generated for the pick list type task, or if an FYI task should be generated for the user. Next, we have the restock for departments. Here you can go ahead and enter in multiple departments. Now, if a department is added in this list for a pick list group and an inventory requisition rec is created for that department, then when the pick list task gets created, the pick list users from this group will get the task. So for that example, it would be the user MP. A department can only be in one pick list group. So you cannot enter a department in more than one group. And I'd like to note too that if the pick list group is flagged to yes, you can still access this department field down here. The yes for the default for department only applies to departments that are not contained in any specific group. And the same goes for the restock for inventories. Here you would go ahead and enter in the inventories for the restock. I do want to point out that the inventory that we enter in here must be restocked from the inventory on the general page. So I'm going to show the warning message that you would receive. So as you can see, I entered in inventory new, and it gives me the error message that new only receives transfers from the GS inventory, which is why I can't define it here within the restock for inventories, since GS is what supplies new and not my CS inventory. Going back into my securities, verify groups. The next verify group I'm going to go over is the purchase requisition. Define groups of authorized users that can verify purchase requisitions for the specified purchasing facility. Med, and at the groups field is where you would go ahead and create the verify group. I'm going to go ahead and pull in my group 1. Again, you would flag it as active yes, provide it with the name. And then next we're brought over to the override users and the default users here. Now if you wish to have a specific user receive all tasks for a verified purchase requisition, you would go ahead and enter in that user right here in the override user field. If you don't wish one user to receive all tasks, then you can go ahead and define a default user. Now the default user will only get tasks assigned to them if no buyer is defined on the purchase requisition. Again, that's if the buyer is not defined on the purchase requisition, then the system will go and assign the task to the default user. You have to have either an override user or a default user defined within the verify group dictionary. You cannot leave them both blank, and you cannot enter in a user for both fields. You also have the option of flagging the email yes for either the override user or the default user. And again, this is indicating that you wish to be notified by email to receive a purchase verify type task. Next, we have the notify users order. Here you can select which method you wish for the system to notify users of tasks. The first one we have is the sequential. And this would be used if you want to have the default users for each level notified in numerical order. So that's the level 1 user, default user being the first, all the way up to level 3, default user being the last to be notified. Then we have concurrent. Here you would have each user in the level notified at the same time via email or task type. And last, we have the highest level only, which is only users within the highest level will be notified. Next, we have the facility default field. Currently, we have this set to no due to the fact that we have a department defined down here. But if no department was defined down here, we would have the option of setting this to yes, which means that the verify group will be set up as a default for all department and inventories that don't have a verified group associated to them. Next, we have the verification levels. Now you can enter in levels up to 4 verification levels for a purchase requisition. Level 1 isn't a required level. The users field can be left blank. And what that means that means that anyone can verify the first level's dollar amounts, but levels 2, 3, and 4 are required user fields, and the user needs to be entered within those levels. For this example, we did enter in users for levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next to the verification level, you have the electronic signature. If you flag this field to yes, you're indicating that you want the user within that verification level to electronically sign for the purchase requisition that needs verification. If you don't wish for them to electronically sign, you can just go ahead and leave these fields to no. And then next, in the users and levels, for the level 1, you would go ahead and begin to enter in the users within that level 1 verification. We have the default field. Here you would identify the selected user that you want to identify as the default user. Now there is a hierarchy in terms of who gets assigned the task based off the default user, override user, and the default user over here. Now the way the hierarchy works is if a user in level 1 is flagged as a default, as you can see here with C. Buckley being flagged as the default, then C. Buckley will receive all tasks regardless if there's an override user or a default user defined. If C. Buckley hadn't been flagged as the default user within level 1 and we had an override user defined here, then the override user would be the one receiving all the tasks. And the last scenario would have been if C. Buckley was not defined as a default user and we had the default user over here on the left-hand side flagged as we have with B. Jake, then B. Jake would be assigned task only if there's no buyer on the purchase requisition. Now you have the option again to flag the email in the FYI task to yes. So if you wish for an email to be generated for the user, or if you wish for an FYI task to be assigned and created for the users. At the departments field, here's where you would begin to enter in the departments that you wish this purchase requisition verified group to be associated with. So for this example, we have department 01.6000. That means that any purchase requisition created for my purchasing facility med for department 01.6000 is going to have my verified group 1 associated to it. You also have the option of entering in inventories. In any inventory type purchase requisition that's created for any inventory that I define within this field would be linked with my group 1 verified group. And below we have the firm dollar amounts. Now here is where you would go ahead and define the dollar amount for each level that can be verified. So what we have here is for my level 1, anything that's a $0 to $49.99 would require a level 1 verification. Any dollar amount that goes from $50 to $499.99 would require a level 1 and 2 verification. And anything that's a $500 and above would require a level 1, 2, and 3 verification. And the last verified group I'm going to go over is the purchase order. So again, in verified groups, enter edit purchase order. Now the purchase order verified group is similar to the purchase requisition verified group. Again, you would want to identify the purchasing facility. And at the PO type, if we do an F9 lookup, we're provided with a list of the 5 PO types that you can create for purchase orders. So as you can see, we have department, return, service, inventory, capital. And we also have the option of default. Now, only one verified group can be created for each PO type. Or you can create a default type, which essentially means that if there is no verified group created for the service type PO or the capital type PO, then the default one would be the one that would be associated to both of those type of POs. I'm going to go ahead and select my purchase type. So again, you would flag it as active yes. At the override field, as you can see, we have MT defined. So what this means is if there would have been no default user flagged in level 1 over here, then MT would have been the user receiving all purchase type POs for the type purchase. You can go ahead and flag the email to yes, which indicates that MT will be receiving an email notification as well. And as you can see, it automatically skipped the default user since only one of the 2 fields is required. Notify user order, same as the purchase requisition. You can either flag it as sequential, concurrent, or the highest level only. E-sign receipts. Here you would indicate a yes or no if you wish and require users to enter in their PIN when they're receiving items on a purchase order. If I were to flag this field to yes, then it would allow me to go to the next field, which is the e-sign shipping notice. And here you would indicate a yes or no if you wish users to enter their PIN when they access the receive order screen when they're in the processing EDI 856 transaction. Next, we go over to the verification levels. Similar to the purchase requisition levels, you can only have up to 4 levels, and level 1 users aren't required, which means that anyone can verify anything that's within the verification dollar level for level 1. So for this example, it would be anything from $0 to $199.99. The electronic signature. Here you can indicate this to yes if you wish users to enter in or to electronically sign for purchase orders that need verification. If you don't wish for them to electronically sign, you can go ahead and say no. And within the level 1, you can go ahead and enter in all the users that are authorized to verify within that level. You can go ahead and flag a user as the default. So again, based off the hierarchy, since we have a user flagged as the default yes within level 1, that means that Steve Buckley will receive all purchase order type for level 1, even though MT is flagged as the override user. We also have it set that Steve Buckley is going to receive an email notification, while MT, who's in the same verification group, is going to receive an FYI task. The next level, we have MT as the default user. So that means once a verification level is required for level 2, and Steve Buckley, since he's not in level 2, can only do level 1, then MT would automatically be assigned that task for the next verification. And then below we have the dollar amount ranges. So as you can see here, we have anything from $0 to $199.99 only requires a level 1 verification. Anything that's $200 and that goes to $699.99 would require a level 1 and 2 verification. And anything that's $700 and above requires a level 1, 2, and 3 verification. Now that's all the dictionary setup that's needed within materials management to begin utilizing tasks. Now, does anyone have any questions on any of the dictionaries that I've just gone over or specific fields within the dictionary that I can clarify? So we have a question on, can you clarify the draft function on users levels? Do you mean the default function within the user levels? Okay. And that was yes. So yep, I can definitely go over that. So let me go back into the enter edit purchase requisition verify group. Okay, I know it's a bit confusing with the different users and who can get things. So based off the scenario that we have right now on the screen, so within my level 1, I have C. Buckley with the default as yes. So what that means is when a purchase requisition for my department 01.6000 gets created, then that task is automatically, when it requires the verification, is going to automatically be assigned to C. Buckley since I have him flagged as the default yes. Now, if this had been left blank and it would have been this scenario, no one flagged as the default within level 1, then what the system does is it goes and looks over here at the override user and the default user. Since I don't have an override user flagged here, then it looks to the default. And the only time B. Jake is going to be assigned the task that gets created for the 01.6000 department is if that requisition had no buyer defined on it. So when a user creates a purchase requisition, there's a buyer field, and if they didn't enter in their mnemonic, their user mnemonic within that field and left it blank, then the system would go and assign it to B. Jake. But if they did define their mnemonic there, then that user is going to get that task within their process task. Now, if I had the override user flagged up here and not B. Jake, I'll just enter B. Jake up here, then what would happen is that all tasks are going to be assigned to B. Jake, regardless if that buyer field had been entered or not on the purchase requisition. Does that make sense? We have a question, follow-up question of how do we ensure that email notifications are provided to the required approvers. So what happens is, I'll put my C. Buckley back as the default. So here what's going to happen is, with this verification group scenario, C. Buckley is going to get the task assigned to them automatically. The purchase requisition that got created was for $500. So since C. Buckley is only in level 1 for level 1 and 2 verification, what's going to happen is that C. Buckley is going to have the task in his process task, and Kayla is going to show these different type of scenarios, but I'll explain it really quickly. So C. Buckley is going to have this process task assigned to him. He'll be able to verify levels 1 and 2, since he is also listed here in the level 2 verification. But since he's not listed in the level 3 verification and the purchase requisition is for $500, then since Meditech is flagged as the default yes, then that task is going to go from C. Buckley's work list over onto Meditech's work list. And I apologize, I'm just reading the question again, and you were asking about the email notification. We do have I believe we do have a knowledge base or a document that goes over the email portion of setup that's required for users to automatically get email notifications. But once this is flagged as yes and the remaining setup is completed, then the users would go ahead and get these email notifications, and it lets them know what type of task that email is for. What we can do is we'll look for that setup documentation, and we can share it with everybody that's participated on this WebEx today. Does anyone else have any other questions? All right, if there are no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Kayla, and she's going to go over the examples of what happens once process or tasks have been appearing on your process task work list. All right. So, like Joseph said, let's go ahead and continue by reviewing how a user's workflow is going to be affected when verified groups are being utilized. So first, we're going to access the requisitioning desktop to review the process for inventory racks. So you can see I'm still listed as my John Meditech user. And upon entry into the desktop, we're actually automatically brought to the process tasks work list. So at the top, we can see the selection criteria that's being referenced to populate this work list. In this case, we're viewing 4 specific task types in a complete or open status that are assigned to the MT user for the last 14 days. The criteria that we see here is being dictated by entries that have been made within the MM Preferences Dictionary. So as you can see here, the settings correspond to what we saw in the work list. Our options for task type include purchase orders needing to be verified if they fall under a PO Verify group,
purchase recs needing to be verified if they fall under a purchase rec verify group, scheduled work orders, CO invoice exceptions that need to be processed, inventory recs that need to be posted by the pick list default user that Josemary showed you earlier, inventory recs needing to be verified if they fall under an inventory rec verify group, and finally we have a couple of other notifications that indicate a compiled report needing to be printed and a message received from another user within process tasks. As far as task statuses are concerned, we're defaulting the work list with open and complete. But we could also either include or restrict to hold-only tasks. Open naturally means that the task is incomplete and it needs your attention. Hold is a user-assigned status, placing the task on hold. And complete indicates that the required action has been addressed. We've also specified a date range of T-14 through today to give us the last 14 days tasks. Below that, we can choose to see all tasks, only those that are assigned to us, or only those for which we've been FYI'd. The email notification frequency determines how often you'll be notified of tasks via email. If the email prompt that you just saw in the verify group dictionary is flagged to yes. Now this can be entered in 1-hour increments, or it can be set to always or never. And finally, if you're going to be out of the office and temporarily want tasks to be assigned to another user, you respond yes to out of office, and then enter the alternate user and the date range below. And just like in most of the other MM routines, we do have a select routine if you're looking for a particular task that doesn't happen to fall within your preferences and default onto your work list. So this brings us to the MM task selector. And here we can enter the user for whom we'd like to see tasks. And we can restrict the work list to specific task types, statuses, or those within a specific date range, as well as all those tasks we're assigned to or tasks that we're FYI'd on. All right, so looking back at the work list, you can see that we have general information available about each task, including the task number, the date that it was generated, its type and status, the user that it's assigned to, and a description. So notice that the tasks appear either in normal font, in bold, or grayed out. If a task is grayed out, it means you've been FYI'd on this task and it is actually still assigned to another user. Tasks in normal font are assigned to you, and tasks that are in bold are also assigned to you, but it means it's a new task that you have not yet reviewed. We also have access to a button that allows us to launch the task directly from this screen, which I will demonstrate for you in a moment. Currently, the work list is organized in descending order by task number, but if we wanted to organize the list by, say, the description, we could click on the column header to do that. Now for the highlighted tasks, we can see a few additional details at the bottom of the screen. The task type and message appear at the top, followed by the vendor, the number of events for the task, and the most recent error message if there are any. And finally, we have access to several footer buttons as well. Print tasks allows you to print various reports depending on the type of task. So for inventory and purchase rec verification tasks, this tab will launch the print requisition routine. For PO verification tasks, it will launch the print purchase order routine. List tasks is going to generate a report containing the same information that you see here on the process tasks work list for all tasks that are appearing on the work list. Send message allows you to send a message to another user that will appear on the other user's process task screen here. And it will have that TXT message task type. You can also add a free text message to those messages via the add message routine. To reassign a task to another user, you would use the reassign task footer button. Change status will allow you to toggle the status of the task between open and hold. And list history will allow you to generate a report containing the event history of a task. Now events include, first of all, the creation of a task. And then the only other time events are recorded are when any of the processing footer buttons are used, such as change status or one of the message routines. So simply the task going back and forth doesn't actually generate an event. So like as you can see here, I have several FYIs that are assigned to user C. Buckley. A lot of these have to do with the hierarchy within the verified groups that you will actually see in a little bit. But, when C. Buckley verifies, this inventory rec and then it jumps over to the Meditech user, that's actually not going to generate an event for it. So the events are only when it's created or when these footer buttons are used. If you want to change any of the default FYI values for a selected task, you could use the Manage FYIs routine. And finally, select and refresh will allow you to ensure that the most up-to-date information is being displayed on the screen. All right, so now that we're more familiar with the process task screen, let's talk about our inventory rec verification task. So before today's presentation, an inventory rec was created for the CS inventory and for Department 01.6000. So remember that Joe Smeary showed you the CS Department Inventory Rec Verify group earlier, which included this inventory and this department. If no inventory rec verify groups have been built, then inventory recs are verified by the user creating them. But because we do have an inventory rec verify group that includes the CS inventory and Department 01.6000, that the rec is also for, this rec required the finalized lines footer routine to be run, which then generated an inventory rec verification task for user C. Buckley. And again, that's because user C. Buckley is listed as the default user for that group. Notice that because MT is listed as an FYI user in that same verify group entry, we can see the task here, but it's grayed out and it's assigned to C. Buckley. So again, once C. Buckley verifies the rec, another task will be generated for the user that is responsible for the pick list piece of the rec, as indicated by the inventory dictionary entry, which in this case for the CS inventory is the MT user. All right, so I actually do have another screen open in which I have emulated user C. Buckley. So acting as C. Buckley, let's pull up our process task screen via the requisitioning desktop. And when we do that, we will find our inventory rec verification task, and we will go ahead and launch it. So you can see here, this is the same task with the same inventory rec. In this case, it is bold because it is assigned to C. Buckley, and it has not been addressed yet. So we can use this little launch footer button. And notice that for inventory rec verifications, the launch functionality brings us to the process inventory rec screen. Here we can see our rec in a pending status. So to process the verification, I'll select the verify footer button. And once the status of the rec updates to verified, I can use the back footer button to return to the process task screen, where we can see that the task is now listed as complete and it's no longer appearing in bold. All right, so let's jump back to our Meditech user. And now we want to be able to see the final task that is generated from this requisition. So notice that the task is still here listed, grayed out because we're still FYI'd on it. If I use the refresh button, now we're going to see the new task that has been generated from C. Buckley verifying that inventory rec, and this is going to be our pick list task. So again, because the MT user is defined as the default user for the pick list in the inventory dictionary for the CS inventory, the inventory rec for that inventory now needs to be posted by the MT user so that the pick list can be printed and the items can be transferred to the appropriate department. So again, I'll use the launch routine to jump into the process inventory rec screen. So now we see the rec in a verified status, and I'll go ahead and post it. And this puts the rec into a closed status. So we're now ready to print the pick list for the items on this rec and deliver them to the appropriate department. All right, so now that we've seen the workflow that's involved for the verification of inventory recs with an active verify group, let's follow the process for verifying a purchase requisition. So again, we're going to emulate our user C. Buckley, and this time we're going to access process tasks from the purchasing desktop. You will notice though, no matter which desktop you access it from, all of the tasks are going to generate the same way. So again, upon entry to the purchasing desktop, we are immediately brought to the process tasks tab. And since this is the same thing that we already saw, I'm just going to point out our task type, which in this case is a purchase rec verification. So again, I'm going to go ahead and launch my task. And notice that for purchase recs, the launch functionality brings us to the process purchase requisition screen, where we can see our requisition and a pending status. Now, because purchase rec verify groups and purchase order verify groups have levels, we have some additional information at the bottom of the screen here that we didn't have with our inventory rec. So we can see the verify group that this rec is a part of, the number of levels, and as soon as we do take action on this, you'll see this screen over on the right populate with the information from the verification. So to verify this, I'll go ahead and select the Verify Footer button. And so here you can see that we have 3 verification levels. While Yes has defaulted in for all levels, C. Buckley is only listed as a user for level 1 and 2 in the Group 1 Purchase Rec Verify group that this facility and the department adhere to. So we can keep the default response of Yes for all 3, but you'll see that we receive an error that one level has been left unverified. And again, this is because C. Buckley is not an authorized user in level 3. Notice that when we return to the process purchase rec screen, we can see that the verification level, user, and date have all been added to the bottom of the screen. The status of our purchase rec is still pending, however. So to complete the verification process, we'll need to access the purchasing desktop as the MT user. So I'll jump back to my Meditech screen. And again, I'm going to access my process tasks from the purchasing desktop. So again, at the top of our work list, we can see our purchase rec verification task for purchase rec 423, and I will go ahead and launch it. So again, we're brought to the process purchase rec screen, and we can still see our task here in a pending status, along with the status of the verification process below. So again, I'll select the Verify Footer button, and since levels 1 and 2 have already been verified, no is defaulting in here, along with the user information. But we'll accept the default response of Yes for level 3. And once we save it, we'll see that the status has changed to verified. And in the bottom right, the user and date information has updated once again. All right, and finally, let's review the process for the verification of purchase orders that adhere to a verify group. So again, I'm going to start as user C. Buckley. On our process tasks work list, you can see that we have a purchase order verification task. And that is right here. So I will go ahead and launch that. And this time, launch has brought us into the process purchase order screen. So we can see our PO in a working status. And again, at the bottom, we can see information pertaining to the verify group. So the verify group that it adheres to, how many levels, and again, once I actually take action on this PO, we'll see that verification information default in. So this time, when I choose verify, I need to enter an effective date. It's going to default with today's date. You can backdate to any date in an open period. We'll just leave it to today. And again, yes has defaulted in for all levels, but because C. Buckley is restricted to level 1 in the purchase order verify group, we're again going to receive an error, this time that 2 levels have been left unverified. And again, that's because C. Buckley only has access to level 1 in that particular verified group. So when we return to the process purchase order screen, we can see the verification level, user, and date have been added at the bottom. However, our PO status is still working. So once again, to complete the verification process, we'll need to access the purchasing desktop as the MT user. So right now, our purchase order verification task for PO 1747 as the MT user is still grayed out, indicating that it's an FYI task. So if I refresh this, you'll see that my screen has updated with the most updated information. So this task is now in bold, indicating that it needs my attention. And I will go ahead and launch that task. So once again, we're brought back to the process purchase order screen. I can select the verify footer button in order to complete the PO verification process. And again, since level 1 has already been verified, no is defaulting in here along with the user information. We can accept the default response of yes for levels 2 and 3. And now we can see that our purchase order has updated to an open status, indicating that all verification is complete. And again, our verification information has defaulted into the bottom of the screen here. So those are all the examples that we have today. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward process. So at this time, if anyone else has any additional questions, you can put those right into the Q&A section, and I will answer those for you. All right, doesn't sound like we have any other questions. So for now, I just want to show you guys real quick. We do have some additional resources available. Your specialists have probably already directed you to this page in the past, but we do have for our products and resource page, this is the materials management, but each application does have its own products and resource page. They're very easy to access. It's just medictech.com/PR for product and resource, and then the application mnemonic. So for PRMM for materials management, PRAP for accounts payable. So you can see on the materials management page, most of them look pretty consistent like this. There's a section of training materials with manuals, recorded presentations. These would be slides, tutorials would be the recordings, specifications for any kind of upload routine, as well as a link to the knowledge base, a link to classroom seminars. A lot of information that you can find here. This presentation today is being recorded, so this will be posted on the product and resource page under the tutorial section as soon as I'm able to download and edit this, so that should be up within the next couple of weeks. But any information you guys need can definitely be accessed here, so definitely take a look at that. There's some good resources. And if you did want to review this content again in the meantime, we do have a recording up here that's from last year's Verified Group WebEx. So that one is still available for your use until today's is ready. All right, if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to either myself or Josemary or your MM application specialist. All right, thank you all for attending today. Have a great afternoon.